And our next guy is in the opposite mold here, Matthew, because the floor could be scary with Aaron Jones, where really just because of injuries, right? He turns 30 in December. He's missed 6 games last season with hamstring and knee injuries. Yes, he's with a new team with Kevin O'Connell, but there's a giant disparity from where you have him compared to where he's going. On Yahoo, he's going around 53, RB19. You have him as RB19 as well, but you have him 71st overall.
Again, I'm loading up more on wide receivers early in the draft. So again, it's just sort of like overall roster construction in terms of when you're doing it and doing it in the draft. And so you can look at my ranks and compare it to Yahoo's ADP. I like Aaron Jones more than you guys do. I know you guys, I wouldn't have put him on the bust list. I'll tell you, he's not on the hate list, for example, despite the fact that he's going 2 rounds earlier on Yahoo.
Can I ask you this? Should he be going ahead of Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, and T. Higgins?
No.
Kind of throw up in the air.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Definitely not Rice or Tank Dell.
Correct.
Just quietly, Rashee Rice is the biggest value in fantasy right now. Like, he's not, the court date is like December 9th.
The scare is wearing off for everybody. Everyone's catching up.
Right.
Now.
He's the number 1 receiver for Patrick Mahomes, and he's really good.
That one should not be close.
Yeah.
Like, Aaron Jones is not in the same stratosphere from a fantasy perspective as Rashee Rice right now.
Yeah.
He's being drafted ahead of him.
Which is crazy. I think the pro Aaron Jones argument is that when he was healthy last year, that's a big, but when he was healthy last year, he was good, especially down the stretch. He was really good. You think about that playoff game. He looked awesome, in the Packers playoff game against the Cowboys. And then, now he goes to Minnesota, where they've got Sam Darnold. And so maybe does Kevin O'Connell want to lean on the run game a little bit more? He's a nice pass catcher as well. Does Darnold dump off a little bit as well, especially when you think about the fact that Jordan Addison's, banged up and, Justin Jefferson may see like triple teams.
Right. Hawkinson's not ready to play.
Right, Hawkinson's not ready. So just does Aaron Jones get more passing game work this year than we've seen in Green Bay? And does he get more run? But yes, injury concerns are real, as is, last year. Last year he wasn't as efficient, but he did the end the year strong.
I think the main thing is just that he's turning 30 later this year. Right. He's 2 years younger than Le'Veon Bell. Like, he's getting to the part of his career where most running backs have already fallen off by this stage, and now
cut to Le'Veon Bell just taking shrapnel. Let me tune into Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Let me just see what's going on with my guys. And
I was going to use the Todd Gurley thing, but we use the Todd Gurley thing a lot. Yeah. He's the same age as Todd Gurley.
It's a good one, though.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to go back to the well on that one. I think the thing, too, is that Minnesota, much like the Colts in a way, very high variance offense. Like, it could go really south for them. They are 1 snap away from Nick Mullins, which is terrifying. And I know it's a decent offensive line. Jones doesn't have a ton of competition outside of Ty Chandler, but it could go bad for the Vikings. Like, that could be a disaster team. They could be fine. They could be a 500 type of team, but there is downside.
Our next one, Jay, it's just a hard situation to figure out with Zamir White, right? On Yahoo, he's going around pick 70. That's RB23. Matthew has him 91st overall, RB27. This is somebody that has played almost a concerning amount in the preseason. Alexander Madison's in the mix. Dylan Laube might get some passing work as well. Zamir White has talent. We just don't know if the Raiders are going to fully commit to him being a workhorse back like that 4-game stretch last year.
I think that's the key, is just don't look at that 4-game stretch and just assume that is definitely going to be replicated because Josh Jacobs has left. This is a new situation. Back then, like we talked about earlier in the week, Jacobs got hurt and there was no one left. Zamir White was competing with Brandon Bolden. Now, he's competing with Alexander Madison, who we don't love, but coaches seem to like Alexander Madison, and he just seems to get out there and play, whether it's his pass blocking, whether it's executing the scheme. Coaches just like him. So I don't think that Zamir White is just going to waltz in and be this 20 carries a game workhorse back and definitely get 300 carries.
Per Dwayne McFarland's FantasyLife.com, and he charts all the preseason utilization, right? He's playing basically on the same drives as Madison. Like in the preseason when Alexander Madison and Zamir White have been in the same drives. Week 1, White 45% of snaps, Madison 38. White 55% of attempts, Madison 27%. I mean, like, Madison is getting, I'm not saying that Madison is going to get enough work to be fantasy relevant, but he's getting enough work. And same thing in week 2, right? I mean, White played 35% of snaps, Madison played 33%. They each got a little over 30% of the attempts as well. So again, I'm not saying Madison is going to be fantasy relevant unless something happens to White. But I am saying that I think Madison's going to get more work than anyone thinks, and it's going to be enough that it's going to hurt the value of Zamir White. Because here's the pro Zamir White argument is massive volume and touchdowns. Because if he doesn't get both of those things, and I think there's a real argument that he won't be getting massive volume because he's got no passing game usage. For his career, He's played 31 career games. He's got 15 receptions. Like, he's got a career 2% target share.
Emergency checkdowns.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a 0 in the passing game. So literally what you're banking on with Zamir White is you're banking on massive volume and hopefully some touchdowns. And I just think, again, you mentioned Dylan Lobby, you mentioned Alexander Madison. I worry that the volume won't be there on an offense that we don't expect to kind of light it up on the scoreboard.
No.
And so the touchdowns come down as well.
Yeah, and on that, last year, Josh Jacobs and Zamir White combined 7 total rushing touchdowns. Like, this isn't going to be a super explosive offense.
I think that's the problem, is that you want Zamir White in this world and where he's going to be a variant of Gus Edwards, but this isn't the Ravens. And it's not the goal line usage that the Ravens use as well that you always reference with Lamar compared to the running backs.
On Yahoo, he's going ahead of Christian Kirk. He's going ahead of Terry McLaurin. I like both those guys. I think both those guys have more upside and honestly, a higher floor than Zamir White. And he's going ahead of Najee Harris, Jake.
My man.
Your man.
The chosen one.
Yeah.
Najee Harris.
Yeah. Arthur Smith's new Derrick Henry.
Even I'm like, Najee Harris should be going ahead of Zamir White.
Yeah, no, I like that. I agree. Big year coming for Najee. He's
Yeah.
got plow ahead for 3.9 yards per carry on a ton of volume. It's going to be great.
11 touchdowns.
Najee, on all seriousness, Najee Harris is going to be what you think you're drafting in Zamir White.
Yes.
Again, like
People are just sick of him. They're just sick of him.
No, they're just exactly. I mean, like you think you're getting massive volume in Zamir White, and you're not. But you are going to get that with Najee, and it's going to be inefficient. But like, he will be a workhorse for Arthur Smith in that offense.
Yep. And just last one before we move on. Last year, with the Ravens, 33 carries inside the 5. The Raiders, 13. So that's and I'm not sure that's going to go massively up.
Right.
Our last bust here, Matthew Tua Tagovailoa, he's being drafted right around pick 102 and 101, QB 12. You have him 126th overall, but more importantly, QB 17. A 5-quarterback gap that's a big gap.
A big gap. And by the way, look at who he's going ahead of. Jaden Daniels. He's going ahead of Caleb Williams. He's going ahead of Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, I'd rather have any of those guys. You know what those 3 guys have in common? They'll run.
They can run.
They can all run. I mean, Caleb Williams a little bit, but like they're all going to get.
Caleb can run. Yeah.
They're all going to get more rushing yards than Tua Tagovailoa, and so Tagovailoa, yes, it's an explosive offense for sure, but like, what are we doing this for? We're doing this to win championships. At least I am. You know, I'm trying to defend my title in the League of Assholes.
Yeah. You changed your outlook last year. First year you weren't doing it for championships.
No.
It's a rebuilding.
Last year I was trying to
like
last year was my first year at NBC. I'm trying to build a culture here. You know, try to make everyone feel like they've got a chance. They're part of a winning situation here. But now it's over. But yeah, for you guys, not for me. No, in all seriousness, here's a concern on Tua. We're trying to win championships here, and just you look at what he's done in December, right? 14.1. Like, I think we should all remember that playoff game in Kansas City. And yes, those were brutal conditions. But the fact of the matter is that for whatever reason, like the last 2 years, he can't get above 14.5 fantasy points in December. Just, 1 year it's a fluke, 2 years it's a bit of a trend, and so he's not running a lot. He's somewhat inconsistent as well, under 15 fantasy points in 50% of his games last year. We know how explosive the run game is, and because there's a chance that Achane or Mostert can take it 50 yards whenever they touch the ball, it just, as explosive as we think it is because of Tyreek Hill, he's a pocket passer whose fantasy production is somewhat inconsistent and is consistent but in a bad way in December. And so he's my QB 17, and yeah, give me Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, and a lot of other guys ahead of Tua, who's going at QB 12.
Yep. Quickly on Tua. Tyreek Hill last year 1799 receiving yards. Year before that 1710. He's just unlikely to replicate that. He's 30 years old. He's already dealing with injuries. He gets hurt every year. On DraftKings, his over/under is set at 1375 receiving yards. So it's a massive drop off that's just projected, and the under is back. The last thing on Tua, here's how he ends the season when it comes to money time in the fantasy playoffs. And let's go from week 13 onwards. At Green Bay, home Jets, at Houston, home San Francisco, and then the last 2 weeks at Cleveland, at New York. Like, that is brutal.
Brutal schedule. So a guy that has not shown up in December each of the last 2 years just ends the year with at the moment, a murderer's row of great defenses.
I mean, ending the year at Cleveland and at MetLife. That's our awful weather environments.
He's going to throw for 7 yards.
Yeah, and those are 2 very good defenses. We expect both those defenses to be very good this year.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully, respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.